Hello, everyone. Welcome. Uh, you can hear me right now. I'd appreciate it. I don't know if you're watching via ScrewTube or if you're watching via X or Rumble, but I see some people are on YouTube because I see my brother Spirit who's in there who wrote free Diddy, free PP Diddy. That's what. Oh man, how we doing tonight? Hold up. I'm gonna make sure y'all see me. Give me a second. I just jumped right into it. I didn't play any music. Have anything today. Uh, let's go right about. Whoa, how we doing, family? Welcome. Yeah, I got no tie on. I am all blue. I am blue. I am blue. I had to take my tie off. Forgive me. I know I usually like to come out here loyally. I just like to. I'm doing it casual today. I think I've earned it from what I've had to do fighting prosecutors, dealing with crazy ass clients, and also some crazy ass family members. Y'all know what I mean. Y'all know how it is when you're a working man and you got to work at home too. Give me that thumbs up if you know what I'm talking about. We all singing the blues, but we here as a family. Welcome. We got 18, 19 people, it says on X. See, that's one thing I love about Elon Musk, I must say, is that shadow banning shit that was here previously when this was formerly Twitter has ended for the most part. I've gotten more of my subscribers. I've gotten more of my viewers, more people who watch me, listen to me, give their shout out and support on X. YouTube, not so much. Of course, you know what we're going through. And Rumble is a mixed bag. They are similar in a sense to X because it's now a conservative platform, which not necessarily is always a good thing, but they don't do the shadow banning and they're not as bad on restricting free speech. And so we got we got a couple of things we want to talk about. Now, I know that most of you all, I've been gone for a couple of weeks. I have not come on the channel or said anything, uh, in part because of I've been so extremely busy. I kid you not. And I needed a break. I needed a real long break from coming on YouTube, doing a live stream, coming on X. Uh, I was out of town actually for the last, well, not this past week, but the week before that, back the second week of May, because I went to Atlanta and I was invited to perform for the World Series of Comedy Festival. And I got some pictures I'm going to show you all. I ended up putting them online. I had a great time doing the show, although I didn't win anything, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. That whole thing, and I don't know who is on there, uh, who's on here, who may be a part of that. Uh, I don't really care. That whole thing I went through, that series, that was some. Let's just say the panel, the judges got it wrong, how it was set up. There were about 15 comedians on there, and I got the most laughs. And I'm not saying that to toot my own horn, but I had the consistent laughs that they look for. I've told y'all before, comedy clubs look for about 8 to 10 seconds of laughter for each minute that you're on there. I was pretty consistent with it. There were some other comedians. Of course, I was one of four black comedians, or I should say three, that went up there because there was a black woman from the Carolinas. I'm sorry, I can't forget your name. And there was a brother who was uh, the first comedian that went up. That brother, I have their names off the top of my head. I had the list, but I can't remember exactly, y'all. I'm sorry. But that whole World Series of Comedy, man, that was, yeah, I was taken aback by it. But the good news is, for anybody asking, I think this guy was name was Daryl Hearns from Phoenix. But the good news is, ladies and gentlemen, was that, and the sister's name was Kiara Benson. I'm gonna get to that in a minute, Spirit, but I gotta talk about this with the family. But the good news is, guys, I got to perform. I had family members up in Atlanta, Georgia, who hadn't seen me perform before, so I got a new support group. I got new followers, and I made new friends. That was a learning experience for me. It was a good experience in the sense that I got exposure. That taping that we did, it was put on StreamYard. It's supposed to be featured on Sirius XM. So I think that's going to be a great thing. So I'm going to be on Sirius XM, even though I lost. So I have at least, so somebody's listening. So I have that to hang my head up. I hold my head high, I should say, on that aspect. But yes, I appreciate it, Spirit. We're gonna talk about. I know. Hold your horses. I know you want me to talk about PP Diddy. We're gonna get into it. PP Diddy. PP. PP Diddy. That. Oh, I got a picture. Let me show. Yeah, PP Diddy. Ain't this about a bitch? The hell is he doing? Y'all know he's y'all know he's sick in the head. He get something wrong with Diddy. We're gonna get into it. I was on. Shout out to Queen Ahmadiyya Shakur as well. I was on her platform, and why won't so? I'm gonna see if I can. I have this thing open, so I'm still trying to get used to. Hold on, y'all. I'm still trying to get used to these files that I have here. So, what StreamYard when you want to share the screen? Yeah, man, I already know about the inmates. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. They've already caught 5. There's an interesting story behind that. Okay. I'm just going to see if this works. So I uploaded this. So I'm trying to share the screen. All right, let's see if you. So this is one of the pictures I took. Yeah, that's me at the punchline. So it was afterwards. You could vote on there, and one of the things I noticed with the voting was my name wasn't on there. They had me as the number. I was comedian number 10. Uh, and the funny thing is about that, so people would call me, text me, Gavin, we can't see you, can't see you. My parents were even calling me, and I told them what number to vote for me on. So what happens with that is you can vote for those, but the judges are the ones who had the final decision. So there was a white girl who went up there, and there was, I'm going to tell you who the runners up were. There was an Indian guy. I'm sorry, I can't think of his name, who really killed it. He did a very great job. There was a white guy who went on after me, who actually ended up getting the third runner up. He was right after me, and he had he had bombed, actually. And the white girl placed, I think she placed second. So my cousin and her boyfriend and a few others. They were even saying, "Man, you got robbed." It's like, yeah, they weren't fine. I don't know what they were looking at. I know what they were looking at. I can't say too much. I won't say too much about it, but and I don't know what their discretion was. That was there, but I had a good time. I wanted to go to the punchline and do that, and I can claim and have that I added that to my bucket list. That was something I did. So, but yeah, we're gonna talk about. But yeah, that's what I was trying to show you all that photo. It wasn't coming up, but let's talk about PP Diddy. So it's been 9 days that this trial has gone forward. They had Cassie testify, I believe, for about 3 or 4 straight days last week. They've had Diddy's former assistants. They had Dawn Richard testify, and she got obliterated on cross. She has a lawsuit against him. They had a guy named the Punisher, this stripper who Diddy and Cassie were messing with. I all I can say is he's into Marvel characters. I guess he's really into the cosplay and stuff. Diddy sitting in there. Somebody explain to me, men, what is the joy of watching your girl get smashed by another dude? What is the joy of watching them turning your girlfriend into a porta potty? Or you as a woman, you as a woman allowing that? Because Cassie, they cross-examined her, and she gave her testimony and tried to say she was coerced into doing the freak offs and she was scared. But they had text messages showing she was willing to participate in this stuff. Even when she was seeing her current husband, she went back to Diddy. This came out at the trial. So what people have to realize when you're talking about, and I'm going to show some video from the trial, when you're talking about proving a charge, I've said this before when I was on Queen Ahmadiyya Shakur's show. When you're trying to prove charges, they are trying to prove that Diddy was a criminal, ran a criminal enterprise, essentially a RICO. That's what a RICO is, racketeering enforcement crime organization. That's what that stands for. I'm sorry, not enforcement. Yeah. That's what that stands for. That's what they are talking about. All right. Now I know, yes, I know RICO enforcement is an E, not an I. I know that. But that's what essentially RICO stands for, what the federal statute was, and it was designed to go after mafia bosses like it's Racketeering Influence and Corrupt Organizations Act. I apologize. So I know it sounded great, but it wasn't. So Racketeering Influenced and or Corrupt Organizations Act. That's where that comes from. That they passed, I believe, in, let's say, in the 1970s. The Racketeering Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. And it was designed to go after organized crime a la the mafia. Today, apparently, it is being used to go after hip-hop artists. Because R. Kelly got hit with this one. Young Thug got hit with this, although that wasn't a federal charge. That was under the that was in Atlanta, Georgia, with Fannie Willis, Fannie the Mammy, as I call her. So busy going after Trump, and she got busted messing with Nathan Wade and doing other stuff, having the longest trial in history. The longest trial in history in Atlanta, Georgia, was the state of Georgia versus Young Stoner Life, YSL, in Fulton County. And so now we have it with, of course, the state of R. Kelly. Now you have it with Diddy. Now they have to prove every element of that. So they have to prove that. Now, what is RICO and how do you prove all of that? Of course, they have to prove that there was some type of criminal organization, multiple crimes that were committed over a period of time. Normally, and this is what you do when you Google this, but normally it's over a period of 10 years. And there are certain crimes that happen under it, or offenses like bribery, extortion is one could be considered that. Of course, homicides or fraud, gambling, things of that nature. The reason why John Gotti got caught, and you have to remember why I don't compare Gotti with Diddy, why I've been on the defense with using this statute, because I think it is a reach. It's because I don't consider necessarily, I'm not saying Diddy is a good guy. I don't think he is, but the level of creating a criminal enterprise like John Gotti or Al Capone or the Gambino crime, well, really the Gambino crime family, I don't see it. It's not the same thing as BMF, where I guess it was easier to prove that BMF, which you should know that show that's on Stars is about, they were involved in the drug business, and they used, and the kingpins on that Big Meech, he and his brother Terry, they were using, or at least Big Meech was, he was actually using, wanted to create a record company, and I believe all of that was a front, and they were able to prove that in court. When John Gotti was brought on trial on RICO and found guilty and did life in prison, they were able to prove that Gotti was the head of a crime family, and Gotti had ordered, the exterminations of certain people. And the reason they were able to prove it, because there was no buffer between Sammy the Bull Gravano, who was John Gotti's underboss, and John Gotti. He actually spoke with John Gotti personally and testified as to such the things that went on. So there was no in between. And some things, of course, the trial is still underway. They got other stuff that'll come in, other witnesses that they're going to bring. So it hasn't all been proven yet. But so far, the only thing they have shown is how freaky Diddy is. As of now, some of the witnesses have been, of course, impeached based off their impartiality. The dude who's the Punisher, that was the scripper, he actually, from what I saw, he is writing a book, and he wrote a book on the meat. His meat, if you dig my meaning. Not that I'm bragging on this stuff or interested in, I'm sure it'll be a bestseller. I won't be buying that book, but but yeah, they got that going on. He testified at the hearing, at the trial, I should say, and it's just unbelievable, the stuff that's come out. So you're talking about, and the trial is set to go on for about 6 to 8 weeks. Now, I want to give a shout out to this brother who did this. There have been a lot of people that have gone up there to the Diddy trial and who have been inside. They've tweeted their results. They've gone on live and given their results in their counting. Well, not their results, but what they have heard and listened to, the testimony that has transpired. Yeah, I only got one person that's watching on YouTube. That's a shame. But where was I? So shout out to the brother, the podcast with Soul. So he talked about George Kaplan, who was one of Diddy's assistants who testified, and there was someone else who testified. Yeah, the Punisher testified about the freak offs. So Shout out to this brother. I'm going to play a little video about what he had to say and what he observed at the court hearing. So shout out to the podcast with Soul.
He said if it was your choice, you wouldn't be here today. George Kaplan says 100% I wouldn't be here. The government forced my hand. Mark Agnifilo says you didn't approach the government and tell the government that you had some information that you could incriminate Puff. He said, no, I did not approach the government. He said the government approached me. So this kid, he loved Puff. This white kid loved Puffy. He looked up to Puffy. He said that working for Puffy was a dream come true, and that his friends used to tell him that he had on the job. It was going to Harvard, getting paid to go to Harvard, working for Puff. He said he learned so much from Puffy in terms of business that he uses it in his life now. You understand? Puffy had a tremendous impact on this kid. He said that Puffy had 3 women in his life that he knew of. Kim Porter, who was a very important figure in Puffy's life, and he had a girlfriend named Cassie, and he had a girlfriend named Gina. The government made him talk about an incident where they were all on the private jet, and when you walked into Puffy's private jet, you had 2 chairs here, and you had 2 chairs there. Then when you walked back, it was like a picnic table type chair, a picnic table, and then a couch over here, and then, appreciate you, bro. And then there was a partition, and Puffy had a bedroom in the back of his plane, and he heard Cassie and Puffy getting into an argument back in the back. He heard a glass break, you understand? And he looked back and could see through the partition, and he saw Puffy standing over Cassie, and Cassie's legs like up in the air, trying to keep Puffy away from her. Then he said nobody did nothing. Nobody on the plane. The security on the plane, he didn't do nothing. Other assistants, nobody did nothing. Puffy came out, sat down, and while Puffy was back there, they were arguing. Cassie yelled out, "Is anybody seeing this?" Another time he recalled they were at Puffy's house in LA. Oh. Puffy called him from the intercom.
So far, what he's talking about, I'll just listen to. Let me stop and I'll intervene. They've talked about what has come out is the domestic stuff. Now, that is not necessarily when you're trying to prove a racketeering influence. A RICO, or let me just say, racketeering influence criminal organization, corrupt organization. They say corrupt criminal. Domestic violence in and of itself is not an element to that, but they're trying to make, obviously what the government's trying to do to make their case stick is to say that Diddy was this violent person who, which is why they bring it in like the guys who were at the freak offs, the assistants, to show that he had a propensity, I guess, for violence and was using that to coerce people into doing illicit acts. But remember, there's a time period that has to be done of 10 years. So that video that was released in 2016, that would happen in 2016, that we've all seen, and now it's 2025, is within, in and of itself, they want to use that to show that Cassie was trafficked or some sorts by Diddy, which I don't buy, because from all the evidence and information, like I stated earlier, There were times when she even admitted she wanted to go back with him, that she was in love with him. But they're going to probably argue, well, she had Stockholm syndrome and all of this stuff. But the things that we learned, especially at the trial that came out that was interesting with me, was that Cassie met Diddy when she was 22, not 19. Cassie was dating another music producer before that. And somebody can give me the name of the producer off the top of my head. I can't recall his name. But all of that came up. Now I'm gonna stop playing him and I'm gonna just go into the Kid Cudi thing, because Kid Cudi testified about, obviously the big thing everybody was trying to focus on is what happened with his vehicle, uh, his car being exploded, but also he's saying how Diddy broke into his house. So hold up a second. So this is according to Trial 9. Kid Cudi testifies about the car fire and break-in and super villain meeting with Diddy. So, and I want to say this, Ryan Leslie, thank you, Spirit. It was Ryan Leslie who was Cassie's first boyfriend. Yeah, she was with him, and she said she was 22 when she met Diddy. That's how they drew Kid Cudi. That's how Diddy looked. They, I don't know if the artist sees them as ugly or they just flat out ugly in real life. Kid Cudi ain't the best looking dude. Diddy looking like Bill Duke with hair. Y'all remember Bill Duke from Menace to Society? You know you did fucked up, right? You know you did. So there's George Kaplan, who was given immunity to testify. He testified that it was regular to see physical violence between Cassie and Diddy. He recalled an incident with whiskey glasses on the plane. He also saw Diddy hurling decorative apples at his girlfriends, at another of his girlfriends, Gina, handing in his notice in the following month. And he said the most incredible thing. Now, here's the thing. What's interesting, and this is what this relates to, despite what he witnessed, being an assistant to Sean Combs and seeing the violence, he said the most incredible thing that ever happened in his life was working with Sean Combs. See, these people had no problem working with the man. You saw all of that. You saw what he was about from a personal standpoint, and you still stayed with him. You still worked with him when you saw violence. If this is what a lot of people can't get over. Now, clearly, he could have left at any time. Clearly, he could have reported. He said he was being forced to testify, which I don't doubt. I think Kaplan was the one, and correct me if I'm wrong. Was he the one that actually got? Was he the one busted with cocaine? Was he the Diddy employee that got busted? That got busted? That was back in December. According to that, no, it was a guy by the name All right, I'm going to remove this. All right, sorry about that. I crashed. How you doing, Phantom? So Kid Cudi testifies. That was what I was going to get on next. No, George Kaplan was not the George Kaplan wasn't the supposed drug mule. It was a Brendan Cap. It was a Brendan Paul that got busted, I think, back in December. So so far, what I've seen, yeah, I think he's a scumbag. But I've seen domestic stuff. I'm just trying to try. It's a reach for me to try and see this with Rico, but nevertheless, here's more of what they stated. So Scott Mascuti, that's Kid Cudi, he testified and said he and Cassie dated briefly in 2011. He claimed that Diddy broke into his apartment and called him to tell him, "I'm here waiting for you." Cassie, I believe, had told him that Diddy was waiting and broke into his house. He says his dog had been shut in the bathroom, and later in a text, Diddy said, "You broke into my house." He texts Diddy saying, "You broke into my house, messing with my dog. I don't want to talk to you." Now, maybe he could have been scared. Maybe he wasn't. Uh, Kid Cudi, I don't even know what songs Kid Cudi has done. You can correct me if he had. I don't really care. Kid Cudi is the one that went on Saturday Night Live wearing that dress, and he said some stuff about Cosby. I've never listened to a song he's ever produced or anything like that, but I don't really care for him. But I'm just trying to figure out if that had happened. Did he ever tell anyone else? Did he make a police report or anything like that? So far from when you read the transcript, that was nothing about that sorts came out. He claimed that his Porsche was firebombed with a hole cut in it in the roof of the car and a Molotov cocktail. And it was dropped into the driver's seat, writing it off. When he later, and he said, "What the F?" because he got the notice from this. Now, this isn't in the breakdown that you're seeing it, but how he was able to find out was a neighbor was there, and during cross-examination, Brian Steele asked him, "Did he take a video or picture? I had cameras of it." And he said, "No, a neighbor took it." And during the cross-examination, Steele had stated, of course, it was objected to by opposing counsel for lack of foundation. And by opposing counsel, I mean the feds. They said, "Did you know there was female DNA present with the Molotov cocktail?" Which was interesting. Now, he didn't get into it or say who it was identified or what, but he testified about a meeting he had with Diddy subsequently, sometime afterwards, and saying he asked him about his burned car, to which Diddy said, "I don't know what you're talking about." And he said, "Diddy looked like a Marvel." She quote described him as a quote Marvel supervillain during one meeting he had about Cassie. Cudi said Diddy told him he had still been dating Cassie during their relationship, with Cudi telling him, "Cassie told me you were broke up, and I took her word for it." Cudi said he saw Diddy a few years later at Soho House with his daughter, and Diddy told him that he apologized for all of that bullshit. I just want to apologize for all of that bullshit. During his cross examination, the defense suggested Cassie had been living two different lives and that she played both Cudi and Combs. And Cudi said, quote, "Yes." Cudi said his relationship with Cassie ended because, quote, "the drama was too out of hand." Hmm. My big thing, I want to see the freak offs videos. What's on there? What exactly they are saying? What are they saying with these freak offs? Who's on there? They mentioned several celebrities, and I'm not going to say that those celebrities were in the freak offs, but Diddy had pills shaped like Tesla. There was stuff they had dildos and all this stuff, oils everywhere in his hotel room, a pool where you can pee in. This just crap. Now, luckily for the jury, they don't have to talk about this into the weekend. The judge broke for the day, so they go back to court on Tuesday. Because as you know, Monday is the Memorial Day holiday. But this is some BS. The Punisher. Yeah, Cassie's mom testified and talked about how there was an extortion attempt where Diddy got 20 grand from her, saying if he didn't release this this was in 2011, guys, he was going to leak the video, which by definition could be, and I can admit that could be considered extortion. But I guess the key with that is the statute of limitations. If it was over 10 years ago, had it prescribed. But they're trying to say Diddy had a history of doing this. This is just why they bring this up or try to get this evidence in. And the defense didn't cross-examine Cassie's mom. Now, interesting enough, she did mention that the $20,000 came back to her after they put up a home equity loan, and he gave it to Diddy. Diddy sent or through, if it wasn't sent to Diddy, it was sent to an account Diddy gave, whatever, the money was sent back to them. So I don't know if he had a change of heart or what, or if this was a loan, because the way it was sounded, and she said it was money that was geared to go to Cassie. It was money that he spent on Cassie's career, supposedly, which record labels, they will front their clients, their artist money. I can say this at times for their career, but it's supposed to be paid back. But they got a lot. They got the Negro from the Game as the one from the Arrowverse from Supergirl. They got the black Jimmy Olsen up there testifying on freak offs. Man. That's him.
And tonight with a Pix 11 exclusive out of the Diddy sex trafficking trial. We're hearing directly from one of the escorts that testified today, a man who was introduced to jurors as the Punisher. 51-year-old told us that based on his experience, he didn't know what alleged crime he was testifying about.
Sheree Hayes was a prosecution witness, though some believe he helped the defense. Our Anthony DiLorenzo joining us now. Anthony, you were inside the courtroom, and then right after you spoke to Mr. Hayes, who is relieved, he says, right, that all of this is over.
He certainly is. He told me that he never looked at Diddy, even in the eye, but was not intimidated at all by his presence on the stand, saying he was there just to tell the truth. But as someone who makes his living as a male dancer, wants people to know that he would never do anything to hurt a woman.
My testimony had no violence and no aggression and no anything. It was really like a surprise to me, to the fact I was even called to testify.
Hours after leaving the witness stand, an escort named the Punisher spoke to Pix 11 about his surreal experience on the stand in the Sean Combs trial. Was it intimidating sitting in front of him telling the story?
It was not, because the story is honestly what happened.
His real name, Sheree Hayes. The 51-year-old has been working in the adult entertainment industry for 30 years and recalls taking a phone call from Cassie Ventura in 2012. Cassie is the one who always handed you the money?
Yes.
And she's the one who always set this up, except for that one weird text that you got?
Exactly.
This was his first foray as an escort, but says he would never participate in the so-called freak-offs, and he thought Cassie was being coerced.
I literally can't say that any part of my experience gave me any cues that this was a woman in distress. More of a fetish type of scenario.
He says Diddy was directing the two, but never aggressively. Now that he knows about the sex trafficking allegations, regrets his participation.
I'm just hoping that I'm not viewed as somebody who did something to Cassie or contributed to her experience in a negative way.
Also on the stand Tuesday, Ventura's mother, Regina, who showed photos she took of her daughter's alleged physical abuse, and an email from Cassie fearing that Combs would release a sex tape or hurt her if she didn't pay him $20 grand, a sum he later returned. Combs' former personal assistant, David James, also testified how he once accompanied Diddy to confront Suge Knight in California, armed with guns, admitting he later quit because he thought his life was in danger. So back to Mr. Hayes, the Punisher, says he stopped getting calls for freak-offs after failing to satisfy the demands of the job he was paid thousands for, something that he's actually written about in his men's health book without naming names. So it was jam-packed today at court.
Anthony, it was really like a wide-ranging and fascinating interview. I'm curious, after you spoke with him, did he weigh in on Diddy's guilt or innocence?
So at this point, he says that he really has not read much about what this case is about, hasn't read up on any of the testimony so far, the facts of this case. He doesn't even have a full picture about Sean Combs and the charges against him in this specific case. He didn't really even know what his involvement was until he testified today. So we're going to give you more about this and other testimony. Every day, we're going to dive.
He ain't going nowhere. He ain't going nowhere. Yeah, so this is something else, y'all. So we're gonna keep monitoring this, but y'all know the main thing, that story. But yeah, the jurors are gonna go home with all of this stuff on their knowledge, and they're taking a break. The judge noted that some of the jurors were falling asleep during the trial today, which is an issue. So he broke and gave them Friday off. So that's going to be interesting. So what do y'all think, ladies and gentlemen, in the case of P. Diddy? And so far, I want to switch gears. We're going to be talking about the prison escapee that happened at OPP in New Orleans, in my hometown, unfortunately. There's been a manhunt. They've arrested 5 so far. They've so far got 5 so far, one of whom was jailed on a second-degree murder charge. So we're going to go courtesy of Fox News. So these, and y'all saw the video. Y'all saw how they came out of the jail like they just got out of school for the last day. They were hopping, wee, wee.
Law enforcement across the area searched for the remaining 6 people who escaped from the Orleans Parish Jail Friday.
Authorities say the Orleans Justice Center maintenance worker Sterling Williams helped them escape. Williams says one of the escapees, Antoine Massey, threatened to stab him if he didn't help. Now,
so they arrested this guy, fair use by the way, Sterling Williams, on 10 counts of principal to a simple escape, and gave him a $1.1 million bond. I think they tried to transfer him to another facility because I'm sure he knew how to get out of there. They know how to get out of there now. But we're going to finish. Let's continue.
The escapees, Antoine Massey, threatened to stab him if he didn't help. Now, a local provider of electronic monitors says that Massey should never have been placed in the general jail population to begin with.
Matt Dennis calls Massey an escape artist with a dangerous history, as Rob Masson reports.
When it comes to the arrest of Orleans jail maintenance worker Sterling Williams, Matt Dennis says he wasn't surprised.
And you're astonished that they keep this level of risk on the first floor of that jail.
Dennis with ASAP Release Electronic Monitors is talking about escapee Antoine Massey, who was accused in court documents of threatening to stab Williams prior to the jailbreak if Williams didn't cut off water to the toilet that was yanked out to provide an escape route for 10 inmates.
There isn't an ounce of this man's history that doesn't escape.
Dennis says Massey, who's wanted for rape and kidnapping in St. Tammany, as well as domestic abuse and theft in Orleans Parish, had prior escapes dating back to 2007 and was no longer a candidate for one of the hundreds of electronic monitors placed on Orleans defendants.
He had no intention of wearing an ankle monitor. 2 hours. And he cut it off. And we had him in jail pretty quickly. We went and got him.
Massey was one of 10 inmates seen jumping off of a back prison loading dock Friday morning, caught on a camera that was not being monitored in real time.
For that footage that we've all now seen, where you have the 10 inmates running outside the facility, is there a door sensor there that would alert the command center that that door is now open some kind of alarm that goes off?
No, that is not an exit door.
As New Orleans City Council members investigate vulnerabilities in the prison security system, Matt Dennis is helping police in trying to locate escapees like Massey.
These escapes happened. It was NOPD and state police and U.S. Marshals went instantly into our offender management system and identified the individuals in there that had previously worn ankle monitors.
And Matt Dennis says when someone cuts off an ankle monitor, he notifies the public immediately. It took more than 7 hours for the sheriff's office to realize the escape had occurred and notify the public after Friday's escape.
By the way, the Orleans Parish has suspended the sheriff's office. No one is taking responsibility. Everybody was blaming each other. This sheriff didn't want to admit to anything, Sheriff Susan Hudson, until maybe a couple of days later, and formally taking responsibility after that. And now, of course, with the election coming up, that is going to be a blemish, unfortunately for her, on her career. According to WLTV, the sheriff was ordered by Judge Lance Afric for an emergency meeting, along with Attorney General Liz Murrell and representatives from the State Department of Corrections and the city to appear. The judge called for an emergency meeting. Of course, she approved for city council. Now, you saw the one who was charged with helping them escape, so allegedly, Sterling Williams, but his attorney gave a statement to WWLT. So he's saying that the sheriff, and when I saw this, I said, yeah, I don't think they could put all of this on this guy for that. He actually, now everybody's innocent until proven guilty. Of course, we saw the video. This man is Mr. Williams. Yes, he worked there, but he also claims he was under duress from doing so, which is a valid defense in Louisiana. If someone threatened to shank you, oh no. Why would he say? So he doesn't have another defense, at least the one in Louisiana, unless you're saying he wasn't active in all reasonable doubt. But if he's using a direct, you have no duress defense now that you go on WWL saying that that was a mischaracterization. Wow. I would have never said that. I'd have just stated, look, my client is innocent until proven guilty. There's been a lot of rush to judgment as to who did what. My client, we believe, is a fall guy for this. I wouldn't have said we don't, the duress argument wouldn't make, essentially with what he's doing. We don't have a duress argument here. That's what he's saying. That's a good argument to say. He's saying he's a fall guy. Now they did arrest these two ladies. They also they caught Corey Boyd, and there's another little part I want to bring to this too. Yeah, y'all said y'all couldn't hear the lawyer speak. Was I muted? It looks like I was muted, but y'all couldn't hear the lawyer previously. I'll go back and play it in a second after this video. But I think that lawyer has a good. I didn't like the fact that he did remove the arrest argument, but essentially he's stating that the sheriff is the one at fault for this. He had no part in participating. So he's saying he played no principle. Principle, of course, would be in common, well, I don't say common law, but under the model penal code, I believe you call it accessories before the fact. So people who have to be accessories before the fact tend to have to aid in the commission of a crime in some way, shape, or form, but you have to be able to prove that he knew about it or had knowledge of it in some way, shape, or form, and that he was a willing participant. That's, even if he wasn't the one escaping, which he isn't, that's what he's stating that the state can't prove, and he's trying to maintain his innocence, which I can understand. But we'll go ahead and finish the video. Now, Derek Groves, that gentleman on the right, Derek Groves is a very interesting person. That name is familiar, that last name, because Derek Groves' family is the grandson of a woman that was executed by Lynn Davis. That's a infamous case in New Orleans. A very corrupt police officer who ordered his grandmother's murder. And Groves was waiting to receive a life sentence for 2 counts of second-degree murder and 2 separate counts of manslaughter. His grandmother was a victim on the orders of Lynn Davis. That's in the 90s. That was a very infamous case. I still remember it. Groves he wasn't born then. His grandmother was killed in the front of the family home on the 1300 block of Alabo Street, where she was shot by Paul Cool Hardy on the orders of corrupt New Orleans patrol officer Lynn Davis. Davis remains on death row while Hardy was serving a life sentence. And this is a child of the community. A lot of people were shocked to know that he was being charged and convicted of murder himself. Someone said, according to someone who had played a role in raising him, a woman by the name of Gail Slack, she's a neighborhood matriarch who helped raise Groves as a baby. She said she hopes they catch him, but they don't hurt him. That he, believe his aunt even said he hope he turns himself in. She said, quote, "A small child hearing how his grandmother was killed by police. Yeah, it had a big factor in him. But he's still my Derek. He's still my baby. I raised him. A lot of people just see the bad side of him." That's Derek Groves to the right. Look at this. What campaign? just so I could verify with a thumbs up. Spirit, you mentioned it. Can you hear the lawyer? I'm going to keep playing it. So Jason Williams, who's the ADA, he actually, not the ADA, he's the district attorney of, and he criticized the sheriff for not having DNA. Okay, so somebody says there's no sound. And I can clearly hear the video, so I don't know what's going on. Why no one can hear it. The audio on the sound is clearly there. Yeah. I don't know what's going on, guys. The audio, I can hear the, hold on. I can hear everything. I don't know what's going on. This is what I'm gonna do. Hold up. Let me refresh and see if that changes anything.
I gave the order. Do you know how hard Harry and I have been working to keep the peace? Your mother didn't give the order. It was me.
All of that area for everything that we would need in court to prove a case, fingerprints, DNA, and the like.
And just to know, it's been almost a week, and this has not been done. Is that troubling to you? If you can talk a little bit about that.
There's so much that's been troubling about what was requested and what notifications went out. Obviously the focus needs to be and is for everyone, including my office, getting these dangerous fugitives back in custody. The public has really stepped up and done its part in terms of Crime Stoppers tips. All the other agencies, nearly a dozen, are working in strategic order to go after them. But we have to make sure that we are focusing on this crime scene, the destruction of those bars, that toilet, who could have assisted these individuals in getting out, whether they were in a uniform or not in a uniform. And obviously fingerprints, DNA, these pieces of evidence tell a story. And that's the type of evidence that a jury is going to be looking for when it's time to hold somebody accountable. And we need to make sure we're holding the right people accountable.
There's been a lot of concern about delayed information for that notification. Does it concern you now that you mentioned Kirkpatrick hadn't received the full information on the crime scene? And what should that have looked like, that timeline?
Look, time is of the essence in terms of catching escaped fugitives. If they escape at 12:30, immediately upon awareness of that, we need to make sure that the public is notified, the media is notified, because if that had happened, in all likelihood, all 10 of these individuals would be in custody by now. Time is also of the essence when trying to get good DNA samples or collect fingerprints to make sure those areas are not molested or destroyed in any way. And so I'm deeply concerned that there was not an immediate request by the sheriff to our local crime lab to get in there and examine, document, preserve, and collect all of the forensic evidence that was available there so that we could already have it tested. We've also asked, we sent letters out to the sheriff asking that
after the breakout, and I know everybody's seen the video, the fact that there's been no, and I backed out of this, the fact that there's been no basically crime scene forensics that have been done, any forensics that have been done that would help the district attorney's office, basically fingerprints analysis, DNA, things of that nature. Because even though we saw the videos and we know who escaped, That's just added information that they have that's common because you have to authenticate who these individuals are, which is why they need it. And he's obviously upset that it hadn't been done. So their office had to go over there and send it, is what he's stating.
That she and all members of the Orleans Parish Sheriff's Office and any maintenance workers or crew members submit to voluntary samples of DNA and provide fingerprints so that they can be included or excluded from this investigation. The faster we get those things, the faster we can process this and figure out who may have touched something, been in that corridor. That can tell us a lot. Hopefully we get some support and voluntary compliance from that letter.
DA, would you please talk about the subpoenas? I have a question. One moment. Mr. Williams, with all due respect, it's day 7 now of this manhunt. Why now are you concerned about the sheriff's office response?
I'm not. That's why I'm here. I mean, DAs typically aren't at crime scenes ordering fingerprint testing. That's not normal. Normally, the law enforcement agency that's responsible would have gotten that done, would want that done. When I first determined that it had not been done, I got in touch with my partner, Ann Kirkpatrick, and she got a team over here. And not only did she send crime scene techs, she sent the director of the crime lab to make sure it was done properly.
Can you talk about the subpoenas
issued to Sheriff Hudson and other staff members?
That's also.
Would you talk about the subpoena that was issued on Sheriff Susan Hudson as well as other OPSO staff members?
Look, we're just doing our job. We're just collecting.
That Mr. Williams is absolutely innocent, but he was used as a tool by these police. He was a fall guy by Sheriff Hudson.
There's been accusations that he turned off the water, moved the toilet. What would you say to these accusations?
Well, first off, him turning off the water is not an accusation. It's a fact. We readily admit that. He is the jail plumber. There was an overflowing toilet in what he tells me was a handicap stall that should not have been in use. Nevertheless, was open, and this toilet apparatus was clogged and spilling out into the floor. He was told by a deputy there was no work order. He asked, and the deputy convinced him that as he was there, could he just look at it? He assessed the situation, determined he would have to shut off the water to fix it, which he did in his role as jail plumber.
What has your client said about the threats that he may or may not receive from?
That is a complete mischaracterization by law enforcement. Mr. Williams had a passing exchange with one of the inmates wherein he was assessing the toilet, made the determination he needed to turn off the water. The inmate, as he was there, happened to say something about shanking him. He didn't take this as a threat. He wasn't acting out of fear. He was taking this as normal jailhouse banter. He reported it during his interview with law enforcement because it is a fact that happened. But certainly, as lawyers and journalists both know, not all facts lead somewhere. He stated it as a fact, which it was. The fact that law enforcement has now tried to jump on that and make that his reason for conspiring, I suppose, is nothing more than a fallacy.
Where's your client being held and what comes next for him? Have you bonded out?
His bond is over $1 million, and he's a jail plumber. He is not bonded out. As far as where he's being held, I would prefer to keep that a secret for his own safety.
What did y'all think about the bond that was set?
That I was not in court for that. I was appointed afterwards. I will say, based upon the charges, I understand this is a high-profile, nationally covered case. Nevertheless, when you look at what he's actually charged with versus the amounts, they are way out of bounds. That is completely ridiculous. This is a 33-year-old hometown man. The furthest he's gone away is college just a little up the road where he was a tuba player in the marching band. He has worked at this jail for 5 years. He has never been arrested before. And now suddenly he's being shipped off to a secret location, housed separately from other inmates.
I'm a defense attorney. I can't do that.
$1.1 million bond that there's simply no need in.
Do you think there was someone else inside the jail that was helping these inmates?
Do I think so? Yes. Do I have any proof of that? No. And did Sterling?
Maybe
no,
I
because he was not part of any conspiracy. He was doing his job and was apparently used. And let me be clear, I don't think they used Sterling specifically. I think it was using the toilet specifically, and he had the misfortune of being the plumber on duty.
What comes next now? I know y'all were in court yesterday, or your client was. What comes next now for your client?
What should come next is my client going home, where innocent people belong. However, what we can expect is he will go through the screening process, just like any other case that comes to the DA's office. They have up to 60 days to accept or refuse charges. Presuming they choose to accept some charges against him, then we would be set for arraignment and allotted to a court. I think we're good.
Yeah, I had to play that video for y'all. Yeah, this is some shit. This is a big mess. Yeah, and Susan Hudson, she suspended her campaign. Understandably so. I think she's likely. I don't think she has a campaign after this. This is going to be something that's going to be sadly an asterisk on her when mistakes like this. And this is obviously, and I'm not saying that she's guilty of any crime because I don't know the facts, but her office, because she's the parish sheriff, it happened under her watch. She tried to blame this on defective locks. It's clear they accessed this through the plumbing of the jail. She bears responsibility with this, and so does her staff. So I'm going to wrap this thing up, y'all. This wasn't going to be a long live stream. We'll talk about this a little bit more. Everyone that's out in New Orleans, please be safe out there. I'm trying to see why. So now my X viewers, when I just refreshed, my X viewers isn't up now. But I'm just gonna happen to go on X. Let me click on the StreamYard link for a second. I'm going to see how many viewers I have. 75. So I don't know why it's not coming on StreamYard for some reason. But anyway, guys, I hope you all be safe and be blessed. Thank you all for the love. If you're watching via Rumble, you're watching via ScrewTube or X, make sure you smash up the likes, ladies and gentlemen. Smash up the likes. Hit that notification bell. Please donate. If you could, if you love me for my time, pay for my time, you can actually drop something in the Cash App, PayPal, or Zelle. All right, y'all, be one, be safe, and be blessed out there. It's real. The streets are talking. I'll holla. Peace. Whoever you are, wherever you are, hope you are blessed and doing safe. Ladies and gentlemen, greetings, family. Of course, I'm tuning in. You see me without the glasses off today. But if you're looking for some opportunities, particular advertisement opportunities, then look no further at the link at the bottom to my email address. You can hit me up for advertisement opportunities. We are supporting and promoting your businesses here on this channel. You can also, if you would like to donate and subscribe to our Patreon, a link is at the bottom as well. So you have multiple ways in which you can advertise with the platform by emailing me when we go on through our live stream. You also have access to premium content, those that want to see premium content that you will not find here on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter, as I am suspended probably by now. You guys can check out the Patreon at link at the bottom. But advertisement opportunities, definitely email me, gavin.grich1@gmail.com for rates. And for the Patreon, it is the same as the YouTube channel. It is channel gboot2786. All right, I'll holla. Peace.